Welcome, both of you, to our panel on NAATCO's production of Queen. We're very excited to have both of you with us and excited for this conversation. We're taking this time to talk to the writer and director of the play to get some background and hear about their experiences of building this production.
My name's Aneesha Kudtarkar, and I am the director of Queen.
I'm Madhuri Shekar, and I'm the playwright of Queen.
That was a very concise introduction.
Do you want? Should we introduce ourselves with more detail? Is there?
Yeah, please, Aneesha, tell us about where you grew up and how you came to directing, and also how you came to Queen.
Yeah, I grew up just outside of Dallas, and then I did my undergrad at SMU, which is a university in Dallas, Southern Methodist University. And I suppose I came to theater the way that a lot of people do. Like, I did it in high school and I enjoyed doing it, and I opted to continue that study in college. But it was a BFA in theater program. And so I was still taking acting classes. And I remember pretty early on having the experience of being in acting class, doing scene work, and sort of going, I'm not doing great at this right now, but I think I know what I should be doing. And I think I could communicate that to someone else better than I am right now, than I'm doing this work right now. And so that was sort of the beginning of it. And then I took directing classes my junior and senior year, and it's sort of with an incredible teacher, and my mind was sort of blown every day that I would go to class. And it seemed like that was a role that felt the most joyful and the most collaborative. And like, I was allowed to sort of work with the most people in the most expansive way. And so that became the journey that I wanted to go on in the world of theater.
And how did you come to Queen?
I came to Queen via NAATCO. Their partnership that they had started to have a conversation around with Long Wharf was like coming into clearer focus, and Mia and Peter and Jacob had all read Queen and loved it, and felt like that was, the ideal way for them to launch this inaugural partnership. And so Mia sent me the script, and I read it and I loved it. And I felt like it was doing so many things so successfully, and just seemed like it was going to be a really lovely play to direct and to be in the room with actors working on. And so that was how I was brought on board.
Madhuri?
My life story. Super condensed version. I grew up in San Jose, California, and then Singapore, and then Chennai, India. Did not really get a chance to do theater much in high school, but when I was really young, my dad was doing community theater in the Bay Area, and I loved watching him and his friends rehearse. So I think something got implanted in there. At that time, I was writing a lot. I was writing Harry Potter fan fiction. And so when I got to college, and I went to an all-girls college in India, I immediately joined the dramatics club. And, there are not that many plays for like an ensemble of Indian women to perform. So we were writing most of our own stuff. And I like Aneesha, I was like, at some point I was like, okay, the writing is what I'm really good at. Like, when the writing is bad, it really bugs me. It's like, that's the one I want to like fix. And then I had a more circuitous route to getting to grad school at USC for doing my degree in playwriting. And MFA is not for everyone, but like, it really was super helpful for me, and I loved the experience. And after graduating, I've been lucky enough to just keep working in theater. So that's me.
One aspect that I really loved was the friendship between the women. And I would love to hear sort of in general how you created this specific world, and how you decided to bring different components in. But maybe if you could start off with talking about the importance of female friendships and how you built this one.
I mean, my that was my prime impetus for writing this play. I I was experiencing and still experience really deep female friendships in my life, and I did not see them represented anywhere. It was just kind of, I think when I started writing this, that movie Bride Wars had come out, and that was kind of the typical representation of female friendship, and it was like, this is not at all how it works in real life. So my best friend from grad school is still my best friend. You know, we collaborated so deeply on writing and always talked about writing, and our intimate personal friendship was also bound up with work. And I was like, this is an interesting dynamic. What would happen if something were to disrupt our work? Would that impact us? Or what would happen if we fell out? And then my writing would suffer. So it was like, this is interesting. And I literally was just like, well, what's the worst thing that could happen to us? And then I started from there, which is often a starting point for a lot of my plays. It's like, what's the worst thing that could happen in this situation? And so that was one thing. The other thing was that I specifically wanted to write a play about PhD research students in sciences, because I was roommates with a wonderful friend who was doing her PhD in organic chemistry when I was doing my MFA in playwriting. And I had always been scared of science. Growing up, I'd been scared of science and maths, and I was not something I felt very comfortable with. But seeing how she existed in her world, and how she thought about her work, and how she talked about her work, and generally just how she lived, I was like, this is very similar to being an artist. Like the way in which she's thinking about her work 24/7, the way in which she is dramatically underpaid because our capitalist society does not value basic science research. You know, that's not towards some sort of like capitalist industrialist goal. The way in which she has to constantly apply for grants, and she's very dependent on funding, and she's like, but also just like the passion with which she spoke about her work, the way in which she and her friends talked, like hung out. It just felt very, very similar to the life of a playwright and the life in theater. And I was like, oh, this isn't scary at all. This is like, scientists are just like me. So I really wanted to write about that. So it was those two things that kind of came together. Queen had a bunch of false starts. At first, I tried to write about an organic chemistry lab. Quickly realized that even organic chemists could not explain organic chemistry to me. It was just too opaque of a field. And so I remember I was in Berkeley visiting another scientist friend of mine who was doing her PhD in environmental studies. And she said, I remember she said, what about bees? Everyone likes bees. And she had a lot of friends who were working in the field of like insect populations. And so I hung out with her. I remember I went to a party and I met the woman who became the inspiration for Ariel. So that's how that part of the play began. So it was like all of these different things kind of came together.
Aneesha, so I think it seems very unique, or maybe we're moving towards it being more common, but having a female writer, having a female director, centering a female best friendship. How has that been for you to be part of this production, and what has it been like facilitating the relationships?
I mean, in terms of the team, it's been a delight. Like, it's so nice to live in, as Madhuri is talking about, to be living in a theatrical world where the relationships feel truthful, and like, this is a friendship that as a director, when I'm working with the actors, I can fully get behind, and we're not having to sort of like squint at the politics of how these two women are in each other's lives. And that I think one of the things that I enjoy most like digging into with them is, or, you know, when we were in rehearsals, was just the way that their friendship is about work and their personal lives, and that those things are actually very intrinsically intertwined, and that is how their friendship works. And I think that I've seen a lot of plays and movies where it's like we work together, but our home lives are really what's important. And in the end, we're going to learn that like work's not important to us, or vice versa, that there's a sense of like our personal lives will never be the same, but we can keep working together. And I, similarly to what you were just talking about, Madhuri, like I don't experience female friendships that way either. Like I have dear friends who are collaborators, and the joy of our friendship is that we work together and we are all in each other's personal lives, and that the friendship, like one couldn't exist without the other. And so being able to bring that to life has been a really lovely and joyful experience. And then in terms of, you know, the demographic makeup of the team, to be totally honest, it's just not something that I'm thinking about that often, which is the greatest gift, that there are, you know, never moments where I'm sort of going, would this be functioning differently if there was someone in the room who better understood the experience of the play, or who better respected me as someone who should be a director, who can be a director. Like those questions just have melted away in a nice way. And we've just been able to do the work on the play, which is lovely and joyful.
Yeah, I was reading an interview with you, Madhuri, from, I think it's American Theater. And something that stood out for me was your bravery in diving into worlds that you, like saying that you used to be afraid of science, and then throwing yourself into the world and then writing about it. I started out as a poet, and I did my MFA at Brown, and I actually didn't complete it because I was a spoken word poet. And at that time, back in 98, the program was mostly white men who wrote in very, I mean, you know what I'm saying. And I it's always hard for me to admit this, but I didn't survive the program because I couldn't justify, or I couldn't make space for myself. And I decided it was easier to be back in New York City amongst poets that I felt comfortable with. So I love that about your process and about you. Do you know where that came from in you, that bravery and that ability to build a world that you have to learn about?
Well, first, Nancy, I just want to affirm that you made the right choice in that MFA program and going back to New York. When I said MFA programs are not for everyone, that was exactly the kind of stuff I'm thinking about, and it's still there today. I was very lucky in my MFA program to have professors who were good to me. The bravery thing is interesting. I feel like it's intrinsic to, and I think you were very brave in doing what you did. I think it's very intrinsic to artists, really. I think every artist who's working is brave because it's very scary to do this. It's very, very scary to express yourself and share it with people and be that vulnerable. And I don't know. I don't know. I think it's mostly just like at some point your passion or your curiosity or your excitement overrides your fear. And then you just do it. I mean, like the thing that I have found oftentimes, aside from the many systemic barriers that artists face, like oftentimes the one internal thing that artists have to figure out is like a fear of putting themselves out there, like a fear of submitting, a fear of just writing, a fear of just owning, their craft and their art. And I've just been very lucky that I'm kind of intrinsically a little bit of a show off. Or at least I was when I was a kid, and I didn't really have any compunctions. I was just like, yeah. So I think if you're an artist, you are brave, and then you figure out what you want to write. And I don't know. I just really, it was really hard to figure out Queen initially. Like when I was trying to write about the chemistry lab, it was just not working and it was terrible. But then everything clicked when Sanam and Ariel came into my head, right? And so when they came into my head, it was like I loved them so much and I just wanted to know what their world was like. So it didn't feel scary. It was more like, oh, I really, really love these women. And I know exactly how they are with each other and I want to spend time with them. And because I have many friends who are in the sciences, and especially women who are in the sciences, and because I love them and I love how they are, it wasn't that scary to me because it was very familiar in a certain way. Yeah, so that's kind of how it started. But I have at times like tried to completely dive into a world where I don't know anything, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and you just move on.
Well, in terms of the bravery piece, one of the things that I read was how you decided to stay in India when your parents were returning to Singapore. How old were you at that point? And I guess that's sort of what I'm referring to. It sounds like you have an inherent ability to advocate for yourself and your perspective. Were you just born that way?
I think I was just born that way, but also like the thing I love to quote at people, and the thing that my mom has been saying, my mom has this saying, in Tamil it's Vayulla Pillai Piraikum, which means, if you literally translate it, it means the child with the mouth will survive, which
Yeah.
basically saying the child who's able to speak up will live, which is very dark. But I think that was the thing she brought me up with, and anytime I was afraid to like ask for something or say something, especially with like teachers and authority figures and things like that, she would reprimand me with that. So, and then I used it against her, which was really great when I said, no, I want to stay in India. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, yeah, that's kind of intrinsic to me, but you know, my parents are amazing and they have always been so supportive of my personhood and my agency and my own thoughts and feelings, and they've always tried to respect that, which is why I have been able to do anything really. Yeah.
Aneesha, can you talk a little bit about what the process is for a director in terms of working with a writer and considering their vision and also developing your vision, and what that kind of melding is when you're getting ready to put a production up?
Yeah, that's a big question, and I'm trying to think about how to synthesize sort of the whole journey with the play from start to finish. To me, especially working in new plays or contemporary plays, the goal is always to sort of get on the same brain wavelength as the writer. Like, what are they on about in the script, and what are the main things I need to be holding on to, and what is the story they're telling, and what are the sort of central themes that are really resonating in this text. And then from there, it becomes a conversation with designers and then eventually with actors about how we bring all of that to the fore in a way that's really satisfying. And I would say that I have ideas that I bring to the table that are meant to, again, amplify those things that I talked about. And I have personal tastes and preferences for how theater should live in a space and how we can invite audiences into a theatrical experience. And so I think my job is, I'm trying to think about like the right metaphor, but I think sometimes with a new play, I feel like it's a roadmap and I'm looking at it and I'm just like, okay, there is a path that I'm meant to forge and we're all going to go on it. And I have to make sure we sort of take the journey that we're meant to and we don't skip any stops along the way. And then sometimes it can feel sort of like I'm holding something a little more fragile, like a seashell on the beach, and I'm sort of like holding it to my ear and trying to listen to what it's saying to me. And then sometimes there are moments, and they're often like invitations, they're not weaknesses in the writing per se, where I feel like the writer has left space for the creative team to make a strong choice or to make a strong offer. And my job also becomes like finding those spaces and filling them with as much life as I can.
Would you be able to describe the aesthetics of Queen?
The aesthetic of Queen, gosh, this feels like I have to cycle back into my mind weeks and weeks ago to what we sort of prioritized. I think a couple things were at the front of my mind. Primarily just that we go to so many different locations in this play, and making sure that with the resources, the theatrical resources that we had, that we were able to let the story live in the locations that it needed to live, but that, you know, in a post-pandemic world where we're trying to keep the number of bodies backstage down, we like, this is all sort of technical and nitty gritty, but that, you know, these transitions became a sort of artistic challenge, whereas maybe in a pre-pandemic world with bigger budgets and more crew, we could have just sort of brought all of the sets on all at once. And that would have been my approach directorially. And so we were asked pretty early on in the design process to pivot by the producing body to create a world that had fewer transitions in it. And so aesthetically, then the challenge became, how do you create a container for many scenes to happen in? And how do you do it in a way that keeps at the fore the friendship between Ariel and Sanam, the relationships that are existing between these four characters? Because that to me was the most important and thrilling part of the play, was how are these people interacting with each other, and how are they solving problems together or not together when things start to fracture. And so aesthetic decisions are sort of driven by keeping the story at the fore. And then from there, I felt super inspired by the bees. And I got really, really into bee research, and specifically how bees are all shipped out to Central California, and the kind of pollination industrial complex and how that all works. And so aesthetically, we leaned hard into the bee component of it, so to speak. And that's kind of where the design team really took off.
One of my favorite parts of the play is Sanam's date and her dating. Can you talk about their relationship?
Well, the inspiration was my life, and my mom set me up on a date with this guy. Of course, my mom set me up on a date with this guy. Anyway, I met him, and immediately he was like, look, this isn't going to work. Our politics are different. And I was like, okay. And then as we kept talking, I was like, oh shit, you were in college Republicans? Like, okay, this is not going to work. So I was like, okay, well, what do we talk about now? And so I started talking about my work. I started talking about a play I was working on, and he was actually interested. So I was like, okay, cool. So I kept talking about my play, and I was talking about this one problem I had, and he proposed a solution for it, and he phrased it in the most insulting way possible. And I was like, so mad. And then later I was like, I think he has a point. So never went out with him again. But that was just what a moment. So that was the inspiration for Arvind and Sanam. And Arvind is so fun to write. It's really, really fun to write a character who doesn't give a shit. It's really fun to write a character who has like absolutely no, I don't know what the word is, right? I'm slipping. But he's also like, one of the things I discovered in the course of rewrites is that he's very much a broken clock. Like, he's right 2 times a day, right? And the first 2 times she meets him, she happens to meet him at that broken clock moment. And then eventually it's like, wait, he's a broken clock. So I don't know. I think it was just one of those things. Like, that guy helped me crack my play. So I'm really glad I went out with him. Like, who knows if I would have been able to crack that play otherwise. So people come into our lives for a reason and a season. But I loved writing those scenes. It's just really, really fun to, especially like in a romantic setting, it's really fun to be with somebody who just is like so direct and honest and just like tells you what they want and expect and are looking for. And even if it is absurd, you're like, that's really refreshing, you know? So yeah, I love Arvind. I never would ever want to meet him in real life. Love him as a character. Very excited to see Keshav play him. Keshav's a friend, and so I think he's going to be great. Yeah,
it's really great. He's yeah.
I think what's interesting about Arvin is that while, as you said, Madhuri, that he doesn't give a shit and just is very straight, you really like can sense an affection that he feels for Sanam. And I think that that's not easy to do in the writing.
I think one of the reasons that Arvind is a genuinely likable character despite everything is that when he comes to the table to meet Sanam, he's already decided that she's cool. And we know as an audience that Sanam is cool. We also know that generally women like Sanam are not perceived as romantically or sexually desirable. So just the fact that this libertarian was able to see that in her and be like, I really like her and I really appreciate her mind. And I've decided that before I even met her. You're immediately like, okay, I'm definitely going to get this guy all the chances. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a wish fulfillment, but also hopefully a pretty satisfying story overall for the two of them.
So maybe we can shift into the ethics and the science of the play. How does that connect to sort of your real world vision and where we find ourselves in terms of climate change?
I think I just accidentally stumbled upon something that wound up being like very upsettingly relevant as the years go on. Just that the huge chasm between people who are genuinely trying their best to improve the world and the utter apathy of the rest of the world, and that feeling of powerlessness that we all have, where it's like it's almost like I feel like many times we'll be like, I know what the answer is. Why can't everybody just do it? And so that's kind of especially for Ariel, I feel like that's the emotion that felt very, very relevant to me. And I, like initially one of the early drafts of Queen I was like, what's the conflict? I was like, oh, Ariel winds up getting credit for Sanam's work, and that's what drives them. And then I spoke to scientists and they were like, that would never happen. We have a million safeguards in place to make sure that doesn't happen. Like that's one of, we're very concerned about that. So I asked them, okay, so what are the problems you go through? And so they talked to me about the absolute sheer politics of publishing research and how sexy research will get media attention, often very reductive media attention, but then that media attention translates into more funding, therefore a career, which means that less sexy research, which is just as important, oftentimes more useful, is disincentivized, which leads to people fudging data. Like everything I just said maybe sounds a little bit dry, but it's really the question of, do I honor we all work on a sort of honor code. And so do I honor that code of ethics that we're supposed to stand by? Or do I just play the game so that the world will do something about this? It's like, that is really tough. It's so tough. And it's honestly kind of unfair that these two women feel like the fate of the world rests on them. But sometimes when you're working, especially in the environment and climate change, it is like that, So I don't know, I just happened to stumble upon it, and with oh my gosh, just the sheer misinformation and the sheer, the way the scientific community has tried so hard to communicate stuff about COVID, right? And the way in which we keep getting it wrong, or the way in which research is slow when it needs to be fast, or it's too fast when it needs to be more thought out. All of this stuff, scientists are just humans, but we also don't really have the tools to understand how research actually works and how to implement it. And and then there's just complete inertia and in fact backsliding when it comes to climate change, despite scientists yelling from the rooftops. And so I don't know, it's there's the line at the very end of the play that I feel like is the one thing I can walk away with, where what thing Ariel says about the bees. I don't know, it's just surprisingly, I wish this play weren't as relevant as it is. I wish this play, honestly, I wish it was dated and it'd be like, wow, that was such a 2015 way of thinking about things.
You know what the current state of the bees is right now?
It's actually kind of an interesting and tricky question. The thing with the bees is that, I mean, CCD was sort of all over the news several years ago, and it has fallen away as like the primary concern in the beekeeping community. What I think is notable is that there are no longer wild honeybees in this country. It is an entirely domesticated species at this point, in the same way that sort of like chickens that we eat are totally domesticated. So the idea of them going extinct, so to speak, is not really a concern. However, the way we're keeping them alive is completely unsustainable, like falls into all of these harmful agricultural practices that are absolutely pushing the species to the brink, and we are just churning out more bees without really investigating how they're evolving, the damage that's being done to them, the ways in which we rely on them as pollinators is like really, when you look at the practices that are in place right now, it feels very irresponsible and inhumane. And like, you know, as Ariel says in the play, like the loss of the honeybee would be the end of nutrition and food in agriculture as we know it. So in that way, like the concern about the honeybee is actually most useful in that it creates a greater sense of responsibility broadly for pollinators, which environmentally is a huge concern. Like there are other pollinators that are not just honeybees grown by farmers that we have destroyed the habitats of, that we are using pesticides that kill. The neonics are bad for honeybees, like we know that for a fact as well. And so there's a sense as the human race of like, how much longer are we going to be relying on sort of Franken bees before we reach a breaking point and the whole house of cards comes crashing down? So that's the current state of it. It's precarious and dark, even if CCD as a specific concern is something that the beekeeping community has sort of moved away from a little bit.
Do you feel like the play has made an impact in that way of people wanting to know more, or maybe not knowing that there was a bee crisis, or is?
I hope so. I hope that has been, that people have felt an impetus to look into what our current state of affairs is when it comes to big agriculture and pollinators. That would be my hope. I think we've, Longworth did some great community outreach with some scientists, with some local beekeepers. We've been like in touch with the apiary community in New York City. And so I think we've been trying in as much as we can to empower audiences to look into it, because I think it is important. It's the apathy that you're describing, Madhuri, is going to be a very dangerous thing, and we've already seen that it's a very dangerous
thing. So we're coming to the end of our time. I guess my last question would be for both of you, what you hope audience members take away from seeing Queen.
Well, I hope they have a good time. That's always my goal. I hope they have a good time and they spend, 90 to 100 minutes in the theater where they're just fully with the characters and living with them and having a little bit of a, just a nice communal experience in the theater. That's always what I hope for. I hope people see themselves in the friendship between Ariel and Sanam, and I hope if they don't quite know the world of science research, they walk away with just a little bit more understanding of how complicated and complex it is, and how, and maybe just how to like have that as a frame of reference in their lives as science research becomes exceedingly more and more important for the layperson to interpret. That would be my hope. I primarily hope people have a good time at the theater.
Aneesha?
Yeah, I too hope that people have a good time at the theater and that we bring them into a world that either they recognize themselves in, or if they don't recognize themselves in, they come away thinking about differently. And I think, you know, there are so many power dynamics at play in the play, right? The sexism, the possible whiff of racism, the environmental crisis. Like there are so many things that it's easy to get dark about. And I think that the play ultimately, though, ends on a hopeful note, and on a note that I want to encourage people to feel empowered to go out and do something positive in their lives, and to you know, leave the world a little better than they found it.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. And I look forward to the opening, and I hope to see you both. And congratulations.
Yay, congratulations to everyone. I'm so excited to see the play.
We're excited for you to see it.